WHGE 95.3 FM coming up, the Open Eye. All right. A little technical difficulties, but we here.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression on our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. Yes, indeed, this is your third eye optometrist and host, Patrice Gibbs. Ready to get that third eye open. Sorry I'm so late, y'all. We had a little technical difficulties, a little trouble getting in the building. But we're here now, ready to get it started. And as we always tell you, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. And that's what we do right here on Open Eye. Let me get my disclaimer out the way and we'll get them started, all right?
The views and opinions expressed on Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
All right. Hey, Sherry, I see you, sister. All right. Let's get them started. Good morning. Yes, indeed. Now, where we going to start at? We're going to start with him. Let's see, yeah. Okay. It's something how the colonizers, what we got here, okay, how the colonizers expected African rulers just to bow down. And if you go by the history that or indoctrination that they teach, you believe that. Let me tell you about this king here. In the year 1895, deep in the heart of West Africa, a French general arrived in the royal court of give me a little time here, y'all. I gotta get this right. Ouagadougou. The royal court of Ouagadougou. It was just the capital of the Masi kingdom, seeking to civilize, to organize, and to advise the people who had organized and civilized themselves for nearly 1,000 years. He expected submission. What he received was defiance. The king's name was excuse me with these African names, my tongue has been indoctrinated in the West and what have you. The king's name was Wabago, the Moronaba, the ruler of the Masi, a proud people descended from the ancient Dagban Empire. And when the French officers spoke of cooperation, of friendship, of bringing progress, King Wabago looked him dead in the eye and said, I know the whites wish to kill me in order to take my country, and yet you claim they will help me to organize my country. But I find my country as good as it is. I have no need of them. I know what is necessary for me and what I want and for my people. I have my own merchants. Consider yourself fortunate that I do not order your head to be cut off. Go away now. And above all, never come back. Yes, indeed, Wabugo. That moment was more than a rejection of French colonial power. It was a declaration of sovereignty. A royal reminder that Africa was already whole before Europe came to claim to fix it. Long before colonial civilizers came to organize the continent. The Mazi people had kingdoms with diplomacy, agriculture, trade routes, taxation systems, and standing armies. They had their own merchants. They had their own world. But colonial arrogance could not recognize independence because to the colonizer, no black nation could possibly be organized without white permission. So in 1896, the French returned with soldiers and fire. They burned Ouagadougou. They dethroned Wabogo. They replaced him with a more compliant king and called it order. Yet his words survive. Those words echo across centuries of imposed assistance, aid, and reconstruction from so-called civilizing missions of the 1890s to the nation-building projects of the 2000s. The message has not changed, only the packaging. Every time they say they want to help us organize, what they mean is they want to organize us for their benefit. Wabogo's defiance speaks not only to Africa, it speaks to us right here in America. Because we've seen this script before. When they destroy communities and then tell us to revitalize them. When they underfund schools, then call in consultants to reimagine education. When they displace our elders for urban renewal. When they silence our voices in the name of civic order, it's the same story. Colonization with new clothes. King Wabogo knew what too many still forget. True freedom means deciding for yourself what's necessary for your people. True independence means having your own merchants, your own institutions, your own vision. And true leadership means knowing when to say, go away now, and never come back. So when we speak of sovereignty, we don't just mean governments. We mean communities. We mean neighborhoods. We mean the power to shape our destiny without interference disguised as charity. Wabogo's message is timeless and dangerous because it refuses dependency. And in every generation, there's a system that survives only when we forget that power lives within us. So remember, we don't need to be organized by outsiders. We don't need to recognize ourselves. Wabogo's voice still whispers through time. I find my country good as it is. From Ouagadougou to Wilmington, from Massey to the Moor, from the ancient empire to the modern street. That's the sound of resistance. This is the Open Eye. Hey, Vaughn, I see you, bro. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye. All right, come on. There you go. Got a little stuff there. All right. It's from Brigade, the Vanguard, and a couple other contributors. Right. Let's set the record straight. Because history has been whitewashed, museum washed, textbook washed, and lie washed long enough. Remember what I told you. Egyptology is not a science. It's an information control apparatus because Egyptians were never white. Not once, not briefly, not even close. Not in pre-dynastic Naqada, Not in the old kingdom when pyramids pierced the horizon. Not under Ramses the Great or Hasselhoff's reign. Not under Akhenaten's sun worship. Not under the shadow of the Sphinx or the glare of the Nubian sun. They weren't white in language and feature and cosmology, in kinship systems, in art and diet and hairstyle and gods in rhythm or in burial. Not in any genetic, archaeological, or spiritual sense. White folks showed up late, centuries late, and when they arrived, they didn't bring civilization. They brought measuring tapes, racist skull theories, and eugenics funded excavations. They came with paintbrushes to lighten the faces on temple walls, with chisels to shatter the noses that proved those faces were African, and with cameras to crop the truth. They came with the wild-eyed delusion that anything impressive had to be European in disguise. But the truth refuses to be buried. The melanin in the murals still glows under museum lights. The African languages still rejects their tongues. The dynastic timeline still refuse to align with their presence. And the DNA results they keep trying to suppress, keep whispering the same thing louder every year. The Egyptians were African. The arrogance of whiteness isn't in discovery, it's in death. It's instilling legacies, distorting histories, renaming gods, repainting faces, and claiming brilliance they could never recreate. Because if Egypt is undeniably African, then Europe is undeniably late. And that's the real fear. Because once you admit that Africa was the mother of civilization, you have to admit that everything that followed was built on her stolen children. This isn't about resentment, it's about restoration. Restoration of true dignity of the African fingerprint on the dawn of human achievement. The Nile didn't flow north to seek Europe's approval. It flowed to remind the world where civilization began, beneath an African sun, on African soil, by African hands. So the next time someone tries to tell you Egypt was Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, or almost white, you tell them the only thing white about Egypt is the lies they told about it. Stay woke. Hey, Steve. All right. Right back here. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye. Yeah, it's something when we speak on our situation, and some people, well, you're just racist. When they call black people racist, understand this. Prejudice is not the same as racism. Let's get that straight. Prejudice is a personal attitude, but racism is an institution. How many don't know the definition? Racism is prejudice backed by power. And power, that's the part they don't want to talk about. Power is who writes the laws. Power is who owns the banks. Power is who controls the police, the schools, the housing, the hiring, the headlines, and the history books. That's power. And racism is when that power is weaponized. Black people never had that kind of power in America. We don't run the system. We've been surviving inside of it. We don't own the prisons, we fill them. We don't write the laws, we suffer under them. And we don't control the economy. We're trying to eat from it. So no, A black person calling out injustice isn't racist. A black person telling truth about white supremacy isn't racism. A black person being proud, being vocal, being unapologetically black, that's not hate, that's healing. Racism is not your feelings being hurt. Racism is not losing an argument. Racism is not facing one's personal bias. Racism is systemic. It's when bias becomes policy. When discrimination becomes law. When inequality becomes normal. See, racism is baked into the foundation. The concrete under the courthouse, the ink in the Constitution, the fine print in the mortgage, the silence in the history lesson. You see, racism is the air America was built to breathe. And we've been choking on it ever since. So next time somebody says, well, black folks can be racist too, tell them racism requires power. And we're still fighting just to share the table, let alone flip it. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about systemic control, about a hierarchy designed to keep one group on top and another on their knees. We didn't design this system. We've been surviving it and exposing it, one truth at a time. Because the more we understand what racism really is, the less power it has to disguise itself. So keep your mind sharp, your spirit strong, and always stay woke. Yeah, I noticed I had somebody that, hey, you've been saying stay woke. You know what they did with the word woke. You know what? Don't let them take our narrative. That's why I keep saying, stay woke. Okay? They don't like wokeism. I do. Was raised up in it, prefer it. Stay woke. This is Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs right here on Open Eye. You ever notice how there's more pressure on black people to stop talking about race than there is on racists to stop being racist? You said that, Chris Rock. That's not coincidence, it's control. See, the system doesn't want racism to end. It wants the conversation to end. It wants you quiet. It wants you tired. It wants you so afraid of being labeled angry, divisive, or race baiting that you swallow the truth just to keep the peace. The hell with that. But peace without justice ain't peace. It's submission. It's silence dressed up as civility. It reminds me of the time I saw Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael. He is asked, don't we have peace? There's peace without liberation. Yeah. What is peace without liberation? Like I said, peace without justice ain't peace. Submission. America loves to say, why do you keep bringing up race? But they never ask, why do we keep creating racism? It never asks, why does it still determine who lives where? Who gets hired? Who gets believed or who gets killed? When we speak about race, we're not causing division, we're exposing it. We're pointing to the cracks this country built into its foundation. And every time we name those cracks, somebody says, stop complaining, that was a long time ago. But racism isn't history, it's policy. It's budgets, it's policing, it's redlining, it's underfunded schools and overpoliced neighborhoods. It's not a ghost, it's the air we breathe. And the reason they tell you to stop talking about it is because your words have power. Because truth threatens comfort. Because naming injustice is the first step towards dismantling it. So no, we won't stop talking about race. We'll talk about it in classrooms, in boardrooms, on street corners, and over these airwaves. We'll talk about it until the conversation becomes transformation. Because if we stop talking, the silence becomes consent. And silence never set anybody free. Let me remind you that truth has never been polite. Freedom has never been convenient. And the fight for justice is never quiet. Well, yeah, I think some of the craziest the stuff that people feed into is when the orange disaster gets up and says things like this. I'm pleased to report that today, well, I can't do the imitation today or however he talks. The United States has the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation anywhere. This is the golden age of America. Damn, what a delusional claim. What a golden lie. The golden age of America? Is this who on LSD? I tell you what, tell that to the millions of Americans sleeping in their cars, juggling 2 jobs and still coming up short on the rent. Tell that to parents rationing insulin or skipping meals so their children can eat. Tell that to college students drowning in debt, seniors choosing between medicine and heat, and workers whose wages have stagnated while corporate profits have hit record highs. The disgusting boast right now, disgusting, is that Elon Musk rat could become the world's first trillionaire. That's nothing to brag about. Because what that means is that he surpassed the billionaire, which was disgusting enough, with the billionaire, the Epstein crowd. And that for all that money, that means a whole lot of people are not eating. This is not a golden age. This is an age of delusion where the rich throw Gatsby-style parties while the poor stand in food pantry lines. Where billionaires pop champagne and working people pop antacids from stress. Where strong borders mean children in cages and strong economy means stock buybacks, not paychecks. Trump calls this the golden age. For who? For the hedge fund elite? For the defense contractors cashing in on endless war? For the friends he dines with at Mar-a-Lago? While ordinary Americans drown in the rising tide of inflation, rent hikes, and job insecurity? He's not describing a nation lifted by prosperity. He's describing the nation suffocating under propaganda, a gilded illusion sold to weary people, like a con man selling gold-painted tin. The orange disaster's golden age is fake shine, over rusty reality. Because when grocery store prices rise faster than wages, a pack of meat costs more than you make an hour. When healthcare is a privilege, not a right, when the American dream becomes a corporate slogan instead of a reachable goal, that's not strength, that's struggle. And no amount of ballroom renovations or press conference bravado can hide that truth. Unhinged, unreal, un-American. This isn't a golden age, it's a golden lie. You ever seen Stephen Miller? Creepy looking dude. He's the kind of dude that would take when he was a kid, he would take a sack and fill it with kittens and hold the sack underwater to see how long it took the kittens to die. Oh, you think I'm just making up criticism for the dude? No. His biology teacher said we can't give him a live frog because he'll cut it up to see and stab it up to see how long it takes it to die. This dude is beyond a creep. He's like Goebbels on steroids or something. On LSD. Yeah, where that mic button at? Because I'm going to say this. This is a sick motherfucker. I didn't say that over the air. Stephen Miller, former Trump aide and architect of some of the most hateful policies in modern history. He's not former Trump aide. He's like his deputy chief of staff or some crap. He went to social media with this chilling statement. The issue before us now is very simple and clear. There's a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in this country. It is well organized and funded. It is shielded by far-left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorney generals. The only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks. That, my children of the sun, is the sound of authoritarianism in plain English. Miller's words follow a very old formula, one that history has heard too many times before. First, invent an enemy. Second, label them terrorists. Third, use that lie to justify violence, surveillance, and control. He's not describing reality. He's describing a blueprint for repression. There's no organized left-wing terrorist network in America. The FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and every major intelligence assessment agree. The greatest domestic terror threats come from right-wing extremism and angry white men, not progressive activism. But the truth doesn't matter to people like Stephen Miller. He's not warning America, he's conditioning. He's conditioning America. Conditioning America to accept a world where the state can call dissent terrorism. Where judges and journalists become enemies and where law enforcement becomes the hand of political vengeance. This is what Dean Obadiah, and the terrorism expert and radio host, rightly called out when he responded. Terrorism expert here. This statement is a clear example of what is known as state terrorism, when a dictatorship orders all instruments of its state security and intelligence apparatus against its own citizens to terrorize the population. There's no left-wing terrorism organization or machine. They just want to kill Americans. And that's exactly right. State terrorism is when fear becomes policy, when the government itself is the weapon used against its own people. Miller's rhetoric is dangerous because it turns activism into the enemy. It brings justice as rebellion. It tells Americans that democracy must be defended by destroying it. The danger here isn't the phantom left-wing terrorist Stephen Miller imagines. The danger is the real well-funded machinery of hate that sinks the silent truth tellers and criminalized compassion. Excuse me. When Miller says use legitimate state power, what he means is use the state as a weapon. Use it against the poor, against immigrants, against the press, against protesters, against you. Make no mistake. This is not about security, it's about control. And control is the currency of tyranny. The true patriots in this country are not the ones crying law and order while dismantling justice. The true patriots are the ones standing up, speaking out, and refusing to be silenced. Because once the government starts calling its own citizens terrorists, the only thing left to dismantle is freedom. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. Look up this Stephen Miller dude. Get a look at his creepy picture. Effing weirdo, too. He's not a patriot. He ain't even a conservative. He is an un-American political extremist. And he's one of the most dangerous domestic enemies of the United States Constitution in the history of this republic. This is a man who he made hatred a profession. Okay? He was not merely a part of an administration. He's his dark conscience. He shapes the lie, sharpens the rhetoric, and poisons his moral compass. He helped write the speeches that glorify white nationalism, dress it up as American pride. He helped design immigration policies that rip children from their parents' arms. Policies condemned by the world as crimes against humanity. He fed an agenda that treated compassion as weakness and hate as a virtue. And when the nation he helped divide finally cracked, when the mob descended on the United States Capitol waving flags of treason, Stephen Miller's fingerprints were all over the moment. The propaganda, the lies about elections, the demonization of the press, the normalization of political violence, all of it born from his pen, his words, his ideology. He helped turn political disagreement into tribal warfare. He stoked a cold civil war where truth is optional, decency is dead, and democracy is on life support. Stephen Miller is a man who speaks of American greatness while betraying everything America was supposed to stand for. He would rather burn the Constitution than share power. He would rather divide a people than see justice served. He's not fighting for freedom, he's fighting for control. And that's why he deserves not your respect, not your tolerance, but your deepest consent and internal scorn. Because every generation has its traitors. Those who use freedom to destroy it. And Stephen Miller is among them. Understand this. Democracy does not collapse overnight. It erodes. Word by word, lie by lie, law by law. And people like Stephen Miller are the architects of that erosion. They count on your exhaustion, your silence, your despair. But the antidote to hate is truth. The answer to division is solidarity. The weapon against awareness. The weapon against tyranny, is awareness. The Constitution is not defended by cowards or demagogues. It's defended by those who see through the lies, who refuse to bow to fear, and who still believe in the promise of a more perfect union. The weapon against tyranny is awareness. Stay woke. WHGE 95.3 FM. And what happens when people feed into the lies, into the propaganda? I saw a brother today talking about someone that he had been doing business with, that he can no longer do business with. And how they were in the airport and the Muslim brother was praying. He went to, what do you call it, TSA? He went to TSA and said, this guy's praying. And he's praying in Arabic, and I don't know what he's praying about. That's between him and his God. Ain't none of your goddamn business what he's praying about. But he told TSA he could be praying that planes go down. And maybe we need to get him out of here. And what did TSA do? They approached the guy, told him he had to roll up his blanket. He had to roll up his prayer rug. He had to stop praying. He had to turn from the east, and he had to leave the airport because of some white discomfort, because of some silliness. That if I don't know what he's saying, that I don't have any control in this situation, then he must either be punished or stopped. So they come up with all kind of crap like stand your ground. And where does that lead? I'm going to tell you. A woman lost her life for making a mistake anybody could make. Maria Florinda Rios Perez de Vasquez, 32-year-old wife, mother of 4, an immigrant from Guatemala, was on her way to work. Not to rob, not to harm, to clean a home, to earn a living. But she arrived at the wrong house in Whitestown, Indiana. She tried her keys, confused, thinking she was where she was supposed to be. And before she could realize her error, she was shot in the head through a closed door. She died in her husband's arms. Let that sink in. Through a closed door, no warning, no words, no confrontation, just fear and a gun. The worst place, the most dangerous place to live is in a fearful white person's imagination. If you're a black person, a brown person, a person of color. And now the law is deciding whether that fear was reasonable. Whether killing an unarmed working mother can be justified under Indiana's so-called stand your ground statute. These laws have turned fear into a weapon. They have turned suspicion into a death sentence. They have deputized paranoia. And far too often, the people who end up dead are black, brown, or poor. The culture of fear is a license to kill. We've seen this movie before. Ahmaud Arbery, jogging in Georgia, shot down by vigilantes who stood their ground. Ralph Yarl, a black teenager, shot for knocking on the wrong door in Missouri. A culture that teaches people to fear the other, to see immigrants, black folks, and strangers as threats, has now made homicide a mistake. Maria didn't enter anyone's home. She didn't break in. She didn't threaten. She made the mistake of being brown in a country where color itself can be perceived as a threat. And this is what America's obsession with guns and stand your ground really means. It's not about defense. It's about dominance. It's about the power to kill without consequence and the privilege of being believed when you say, I was afraid. Maria was out there doing what America says it loves, working hard, contributing, chasing a dream. She wasn't living off the system. She was cleaning the system's houses. She was a mother trying to feed her children. Her crime was showing up to the wrong address while brown and poor. Her death is a mirror held up to a nation that has grown morally bankrupt. We have stand your ground laws to protect homes, but no laws protect humanity. We have sympathy for shooters, but none for victims who don't look like us or them. This woman wasn't a threat. She was a worker, a mother, a wife. Now she's another body in the ledger of accidental justice. How many more lives must be lost to the gospel of fear, the call of guns, and the cowardice disguised as self-defense? It's time to ask, when does the right to live outweigh the right to kill? When does stand your ground become sit in judgment? When will America stop excusing murder as mistaken identity? Maria Florinda Rios Perez de Vasquez deserved to grow old, to watch her children grow up. Instead, her name becomes another warning for those who live at the intersection of color and fear. Her only mistake was believing she was safe in the land of opportunity. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM, Patrice Gibbs, your third eye optometrist here. You know the real test of faith? No background check required. You know, sometimes truth doesn't need a pulpit. It just needs a phone call. Today, a young woman on TikTok, Nikolai, decided to test the kind of faith people like to talk about but rarely practice. She picked up her phone, called 26 Christian churches, and pretended to be a desperate mother in crisis, out of baby formula, a baby crying in the background, pleading for help. 26 churches. You think that would be 26 chances for compassion, right? Wrong. Out of those 26 churches, 23 said no. Some gave excuses, some just hung up. Some hid behind policy. One even said, we don't do that here. Only 3 churches offered any kind of help. 26 churches. 23 of them were white. But then she called a mosque. And before she could even get it out, the man on the line said, where are you? What kind of formula do you need? Come here, we'll help. No hesitation, no background check, no judgment, just humanity. And let's pause right there, because the irony couldn't be louder if heaven itself was shouting. These so-called followers of Christ, the same ones who preach love thy neighbor, failed the simplest test of all, love in action. And it makes me think about a story in the Bible that too many seem to have forgotten. When Jesus fed the 5,000, he didn't stop to ask for IDs. He didn't ask who was Jewish, Roman, Samaritan, believer, or doubter. He didn't demand to know their sexual orientation, their immigration status, or whether they paid their tithes this week. He saw hunger, and he fed the people. No applications, no forms, no sermon before supper, just compassion. And yet in 2025, churches, multi-million-dollar institutions with sound systems that cost more than most families' annual rent, couldn't find a few cans of formula for a hungry baby. Meanwhile, the people who are most demonized, misunderstood, and feared, Muslims, open their doors without a second thought. That's not about religion, that's about heart. So Nikolai didn't just expose hypocrisy, she revealed how performative Christian love has become in too many spaces. Choreographed compassion with no substance behind it. Because love is not a brand, it's not a slogan, it's not something you say from a pulpit, it's a verb, it moves. It shows up when someone's in need. It doesn't require credentials, it doesn't check your theology before it feeds your child. So maybe this young woman's experiment wasn't just about churches and mosques, maybe it was about us. And I checked that, not me. About the world we built, where we talk about faith, but forget to live it. If Jesus could feed 5,000 without a background check, surely you could feed one child, one crying baby, without an excuse. Damn. Open eye. Hey, and I see you. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Okay. Transparency isn't a luxury. It's not a luxury. It's the foundation of justice. It's the difference between a government that serves its people and a system that preys on them. When law enforcement hides behind masks, tinted glass, and secrecy, it's not protecting the public. It's protecting itself from accountability. And now the truth is catching up. The FBI has confirmed what communities, especially immigrant and black communities, have been shouting for years. Fake ICE agents are out here committing crimes, including sexual assault. That's not just a public safety issue. That's the direct result of an environment where real ICE agents have been allowed to operate in secrecy with minimal training, unchecked power, and virtually no public scrutiny. And let's be real. ICE has been a laboratory for abuse since its creation. From violent raids to family separations, from sexual misconduct in detention centers, to the disappearance of detainees in transit. The record is long and the pain is deep. When you give an agency the power to disappear people, but not the responsibility to answer for those actions, what you built isn't law enforcement. It's domestic terror unit in uniform. That's why California Governor Gavin Newsom, September 25th, 2025, decision to ban on-duty law enforcement officers, including ICE, from concealing their identities. It's not just symbolic, it's revolutionary. California became the first state to say, if you carry a gun in the authority of the state, you do not get to hide your face from the people you're supposed to be serving. The law makes room for legitimate safety needs, medical masks, fire protection, so on and so forth. But what it ends is the cowardice of anonymity. Because too often, masks don't protect officers, they embolden them. Right? You think they get so bent out of shape when people are taking pictures and video of the crap that they're putting down. When a man knows his face will never be seen, he stops caring how his actions will be remembered. And right on cue, ICE pushed back, claiming that federal agents are beyond state law. BS. That they'll continue to wear a mask. Think about that arrogance. An agency of federal government declaring itself above local authority, above public oversight, above the Constitution's promise of government by the people. That's not public service, that's federal feudalism. When police power becomes faceless, it becomes lawless. When it becomes lawless, it becomes a threat to every community it claims to protect. From Ferguson to Phoenix, from Los Angeles to Laredo, we've seen this pattern before. The shield becomes a mask, and the mask becomes a weapon. Transparency is not anti-police. Transparency is pro-democracy. If you can't enforce the law in daylight, then you have no business enforcing it at all. If your job requires secrecy to commit violence, you're not enforcing order, you're enforcing fear. Let's not forget, real accountability begins with visibility. Every unmarked badge, every concealed face, every blurred name tag erodes that fragile social contract between the public and those sworn to protect. And fragile it is. And every time we excuse it in the name of security, safety, or protocol, we inch closer to the kind of policing that our ancestors fought and bled to end. Governor Newsom's law is a line in the sand, but it's only the beginning. We need national transparency. We need independent oversight. We need body cameras that can't be switched off, public databases of disciplinary records, and real consequences for abuse. Because sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, and secrecy is where corruption multiplies. No one wearing a badge should be allowed to hide their face while exercising the power of the state, not ICE, not local police, not no goddamn body. Because history has taught us when the face of authority disappears, so does justice. And when power hides, tyranny thrives. Transparency is the test. And if America still calls itself a democracy, it's time to stop hiding behind the mask. Stay woke. WHGE 95.3 FM, the open eye. The harvest they planted, huh? Let's talk about that. For years, farmers in Arkansas proudly wrapped themselves in the MAGA banner, giving the orange disaster nearly 80% of their votes. They believed his bluster about bringing jobs back, punishing China, and putting America first. But now the crops aren't selling. The market's been dried up, and the banks are calling in the loans. The barns are quiet, the tractors sit idle. Families who work the same soil for generations are losing everything. Not to drought, not to pests, but to policy. When the tangerine tyrant launched his trade wars, it wasn't the corporations or the billionaires who paid the price. It wasn't the Epstein class, it was the small farmer, the ones who sold soybeans, cotton, and rice overseas, especially to China. Tariffs slammed the market shut. Prices collapsed. Debts piled up. The same president who promised to protect real Americans gutted the very foundation of their livelihood. Then came Biden, who, despite all the mockery, from the right about socialism, sent billions in relief to help them survive. The same folks who once sneered, "Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps," suddenly lined up for government checks. Ain't that up? Funny how socialism always seems acceptable when they need saving. And once the tangerine tyrant returned and cut the aid, the pain came roaring back. Rising costs, shrinking markets, and desperate farmers begging Washington for help. And here's where the story twists. Those same farmers once cheered policies that stripped food programs from the poor, that cut health care for struggling families, that punished the immigrant laborers who helped bring in their harvest. Oh yeah, they supported cruelty as long as it was aimed at someone else. They didn't care when it was black people or women or immigrants suffering, as long as they believed the pain wasn't their own. But now they're living the policies they voted for. The same cold indifference they applauded when others were the target is staring them in the face. The safety net they tore up for others isn't there for them either. Yeah. It's hard to feel sympathy for someone who said, we don't mind if it hurts us as long as it don't help them. You don't get no sympathy for some crap like that. See, they didn't just sow the seeds of this collapse. They fertilized it with ignorance and watered it with hate. And now the harvest done come in. See, karma is not always a bitch. Sometimes karma is a sneaky old lady. Karma isn't always loud, dramatic force people imagine. The bitch who storms in, flips tables, and delivers instant justice. Sometimes karma is quieter, older, wiser, a sneaky old lady moving through time with patience and precision. She don't always strike when tempers are hot or when the world is watching. She waits. She watches. She lets people think they got away with it. She lets arrogance bloom and ego grow tall. Then, when the moment is right, she gently pulls one thread and the whole facade unravels. That's the thing about karma as the sneaky old lady. She's not cruel, she's consistent. She shows up in the smallest ways: a missed opportunity, a broken relationship, a sudden moment of clarity when someone finally feels the weight of what they've done. You might not even recognize her at first, but her touch lingers and her lessons last. Karma doesn't always come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes she just smiles, adjusts her shawl, and whispers, "Remember what you did?" And suddenly, your ass understands. WHGE 95.3 FM. Open Eye. New York, a wonderful town. The Bronx is up, then the battery's down. The people, New York just elected a brown-skinned Muslim socialist for the mayor of New York. How you like that? A brown-skinned Muslim, immigrant, socialist. And the Democratic establishment is not celebrating. You think they'd be proud. You think they'd see this as a triumph of diversity, progress, and inclusion. But no. This victory exposes the very thing the establishment fears most. A genuine shift in class consciousness. Over 50% of New York voters, the heart of American capitalism, chose a candidate who ran not on Wall Street money, not on billionaire endorsements, okay, not on platitudes about working families, but on an unapologetically socialist platform that is seismic. It's a political earthquake that shakes not just New York, but the world. And that's why people in Dublin, London, Barcelona, and beyond are watching, because this isn't just a New York story. It's part of a global awakening. Workers, renters, students, immigrants, people who have been dismissed, exploited, and silenced are starting to recognize their shared struggle. This is class consciousness being reborn in real time. The establishment Democrats, the ones who love to pose with protest signs after the cameras arrive, they don't want this. They'd rather sell us a brand of progressivism with corporate sponsorship and rainbow logos. Oh yeah, they slap the BLM sticker on their campaign signs, wave a pride flag at fundraisers, and call themselves allies, while still voting for wars, for police militarization, and for tax breaks for billionaires. They want to simulate progress, not deliver it. And here's the bitter truth. Barack Obama, the hope and change candidate from 20 years ago, didn't endorse Mandami. Why? Because Mandami's victory forces the question Obama never wanted asked. What stopped you from doing the same? If Mandami succeeds in fighting landlords, taxing the rich, investing in people, the myth of pragmatic progressivism collapses. The donors, the banks, the corporate lobbyists all lose their grip. This is what terrifies the Democratic elite. The realization that people no longer need permission to demand justice. And make no mistake, this didn't start in New York. Cities like Barcelona already lit that fire, showing the world how to push back against neoliberalism and corporate capture. But now that flame has jumped across the ocean. So yes, well done, New York. You've done more than elect a mayor. You signaled the world that the age of illusion is ending and the age of awareness has begun. Brothers and sisters, the people have spoken and the message was loud and clear and defiant across the country. Democrats swept Tuesday's election, not just because of economic frustration or the rising cost of living, but because voters rejected the tangerine tyrants' crusade against diversity, equity, and inclusion, and against humanity itself. This election wasn't about political parties. It was about moral clarity, about whether America will continue to slide into a state-sanctioned bigotry dressed up as patriotism, or whether ordinary people would finally say enough. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And of course, leading the way in New York City is Zohran Mamdani. Don't want you to forget this is a brown-skinned Muslim immigrant, democratic socialist. Saying the first Muslim and the first South Asian ever elected mayor of the city. New York will remain a city of immigrants. That's what he said. Built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and now led by one. And he sent a message straight to Trump. To get any of us, you have to get through all of us. That, my people, is not just rhetoric. That's a battle cry. For every worker, for every woman, every immigrant, every marginalized soul who's been told they don't belong. Mamdani's victory isn't just political, it's historical. And it represents what I told you. A global shift and awakening. Now, that shift might be global, but damn it, it ain't in Kentucky. You ever read something so strange, so absurd, you had to check if it was satire? Well, on November 4th, Kentucky gave us one of those moments. People across the state were showing up at polling places, mad and confused, demanding to vote. They were angry that polls were closed. The problem? Kentucky didn't have an election that day. Michael Adams, the Kentucky Secretary of State, had to go online and explain it. We're getting calls about polls being closed. They're closed because we don't have an election today. You can't vote for the mayor of New York City or the governor of Virginia. Kentucky votes next year. He even tweeted himself, basically begging for basic civic education. Let that sink in. People were trying to vote not for their own officials, but for elections hundreds of miles away in states they don't even live in. That's not democracy in crisis. That's civic collapse. See, this is what happens when propaganda replaces public education. When we spend decades defunding schools, undermining teachers, and replacing history with hysteria. Yeah, it is hilarious, Steve. You get citizens who can't tell when to vote, where to vote, or even what they're voting for. But they'll proudly wear a "Don't Tread on Me" t-shirt and swear they're defending the Constitution they ain't never even read. You know what? Kentucky ranks 32nd in education. And it shows. You can't have democracy without literacy. You can't have freedom without understanding how freedom works. A population uneducated in civics is a type of population ripe for manipulation, ready to vote against their own interests, or worse, they show up to vote where there's no goddamn election at all. So yeah, the birds flying north of the Ohio River might not even stop the shit on Kentucky. But the real tragedy isn't the joke, it's the truth behind it. An uninformed public is more dangerous to democracy than any foreign enemy. This is America 2025, a country where too many people have opinions, but not enough knowledge. Until we fix that, the polls in Kentucky might as well stay closed. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. America's bad check. Yeah. I know it was in August and this, that, and the other, but it's so relevant. When Dr. King stood before the Lincoln Memorial in '63, he said, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check that's come back much insufficient funds. He wasn't speaking in poetry. He was giving a financial report on the nation's morality. Don't think we forgot. For centuries, black labor financed this country's dream. From cotton fields to steel mills, from building railroads to building the White House, we put the wealth in America's vault. But when it came time to pay the descendants of that labor, the teller at the window said, insufficient funds. But the bank of justice was never empty. Oh no, the vault overflowed with wealth built by black hands. It's not that America didn't have the money, it's that America never intended to cash that check. Every time we fought for equality, the check bounced again. After emancipation, no land, no 40 acres. After Reconstruction, Jim Crow. After the wars, no GI Bill. Benefits for black people. After civil rights, mass incarceration, redlining, and schools that still don't have books or hope. Dr. King never said the bank was broke. He said the nation was dishonest. He believed America could still redeem its moral credit. I have no such faith. But only if people demanded payment. And here we are, 60 years later, still standing in that same line, check in hand, still asking this nation to honor its signature, still waiting on justice that's long past due. Yet through it all, we never stop creating our own currency. We turn faith, art, love, and community into our own economic system of survival. We build value where the system offered none. But make no mistake, the debt is still owed, and the funds are there. And justice delayed, justice denied. I'm Patrice Gibbs. This is the Open Eye. All right. Oh, a little overtime here, y'all. Hope you don't mind. Got one more thing to get with you. Let me tell you something, because I've heard so many say this, and it's been going on for too long. I remember one of Delaware's, Wilmington's most popular talk show hosts often said, well, if you give billionaires tax breaks, no, it will not give us jobs. It will not make the economy better. The number one driver of the American economy is not Wall Street. It isn't billionaires. It isn't hedge fund gamblers or corporate titans and glass towers. The number one driver of the economy is consumer spending. That means you, the teacher buying supplies out of her own pocket, the single father paying the electric bill, the grandmother picking up medicine, food, and bus fare. You are the demand. You are the heartbeat that keeps this machine alive. Rich people don't create jobs because they have money. They create jobs when there's a demand for what they sell. No corporation hires out of kindness. They hire when people are lined up at the door, when the shelves are empty, when the cash registers are ringing. Jobs are born from need, not greed. When workers earn a fair wage, they spend. When they spend, business grows. When business grows, people work. That's how a healthy economy works, from the bottom up. That's not rocket science. I am not some overly smart economist. But when the rich hoard wealth, when the greedy corporatists and their sellout politicians worship profit over people, the system suffocates. Money piles up at the top like stagnant water, and everything below starts to rot. They've convinced you that your power lies in your vote every 4 years, but your real power is what and how you spend every single day. You don't need to march on Washington to shake the system. Just stop feeding it. Stop buying what poisons you. Stop supporting companies that exploit you. Stop spending your power on people who never spend a dime on you. Every dollar is a vote. Every purchase is an endorsement. Every time you swipe that card, you're telling the system who you serve and who you stand with. The rich, the greedy corporatists, the sellout politicians, they do well to understand this. Without the people spending, their empire crumbles. Without the consumer, the machine stops. And when people stop consuming, the mighty are forced to listen. So understand your power, people. Reclaim it. Use it wisely, because the true wealth of a nation isn't counted in corporate profits. It's counted in the dignity and the strength of its people. This is the Open Eye. I'm Patrice Gibbs. All right. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Hope you enjoyed the Open Eye. Hope you learned something, because I learned something before I got here. Remember to stay woke. And remember, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This has been Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. All right. Thanks for joining me, y'all. Thanks for hanging in there with me. All right, and as always, close with global African supremacy. The world was a much better place when the African ruled.